Welcome to the Lost in Transition podcast. I am your host, Chris Gerard. Thanks for joining us here. Glad you could be with us. And remember to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the TuneIn Radio app, and YouTube. You can subscribe to us and get us in your feed in each one of those places. And if you have a podcast app that you prefer that we're not on, let us know. We will get found there as well and get it added in. Always available for listening online at the website as well, losttransition.com, Facebook and Twitter for social media. Connect with us there. Let us know who you'd like to hear on upcoming shows. In fact, our last couple shows have been by listener request, including last week's episode with Tim Don. And tonight we talk with first-year triathlon pros Allison Linnell, Alyssa Dela, and Tony Smorgowitz. They are recipients of Jesse Thomas's first-year triathlon pro scholarship. As you may know from following the sport, triathlon, especially in the early years of professional careers, is not the most lucrative sport in the world. And Jesse is really hoping to be able to not only give some financial support to first-year pros, but as you'll hear in a moment, also set them on the right footing where they are able to make money with their career. Being an individual sport, it's not quite the same as signing on with a professional sports team and signing a contract and just collecting a paycheck. It really requires a very entrepreneurial mindset and multiple streams of income to make it work. Interesting to hear his perspective, not only as a pro triathlete with 6 consecutive wins at Wildflower Triathlon, as well as a couple Ironman wins to his credit now, but also as a business owner, CEO of Picky Bars, which just recently reached $1 million annually in sales. So he's definitely got multiple streams of income there, and it's interesting to see what wisdom he might be able to pass on to these first-year triathletes. We talked to Jesse right after the break, and then Allison, Alyssa, and Tony join us to talk life as a first-year pro triathlete on the Lost in Transition podcast. Jesse Thomas is a pro triathlete, 6-time winner of the Wildflower Triathlon, previous winner of Ironman Wales and Ironman Lanzarote. He is the CEO and co-founder of Picky Bars along with his wife Lauren. Last year, Jesse announced a scholarship for first-year triathlon pros awarded to 2 to 4 athletes during their first season, and he joins us today to talk about the scholarship program. Jesse, welcome to Lost in Transition.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, and I appreciate you guys giving the floor to these athletes. So it's great. It's kind of part of the point is to try to raise the profile of some of these beginning athletes and kind of get them out there. So I really appreciate it.
You yourself started, as you said, somewhat late in the sport, age 29. What were some of the challenges you faced as a new pro triathlete? And looking back to Jesse Thomas in 2011, what advice would you give yourself or new pro triathletes?
I think there are a lot of challenges. The first and foremost being financial, and not just in that it's hard to make a living in the sport, but it's hard to even understand how to make a living in the sport. And I guess maybe what is needed, how much of your living can and should come from sponsorship versus prize money versus, external income, maybe from your spouse or your family or from coaching or another job or whatever it is. Just starting off, I think, is just tough. You're kind of like, hey, I want to race hard, and but I'm not really sure how I make a living in this. And so looking back on it, I think the advice I would give myself is reach out to people and ask them what they do. I didn't really know many people, and it took me a little while to meet some people in the sport, but I was very fortunate in the help that I got when I started. And I think a lot of that enabled me to create a sustainable career, which ultimately enabled me to, put together this scholarship.
That's fascinating that you mention just the learning curve of how to be a professional outside of just the racing at an elite level aspect of it. And certainly in an individual or mostly individual sport like triathlon, as opposed to, say, a team sport, where a lot of that's kind of figured out for you and the bulk of your income comes from in the form of salary. Yep. Very, very different when you're essentially an independent entrepreneur for all intents and purposes.
100%. And using your analogy, you as a rookie, you have teammates, right, that show you the way, and you can have those conversations about, hey, this is, I've got this contract with so-and-so and they pay me this much and they give me this much product or whatever it is. And you can kind of help navigate the professional space in that way as well. And in triathlon, that just does not exist. There is no kind of coaching or mentoring program for the elites in the space. And, this is not really a full-fledged attempt at that, but it was an attempt to at least begin, try to begin something around it, and at least at the very least an acknowledgement of that vacuum, and yeah. So the goal was ultimately to try to. I can't help everyone, but try to help, like I said, 2 to 4 that I think were super, super worthy and looked like they had high potential, and not only give them a bit of a boost financially, but also just help them navigate the space a little bit.
This first hit the trade publications, I think, middle to late part of last year as the applications started to come in. How did the idea originate? Was it your thing from the beginning, or something that someone brought to you? Or
yeah, it was kind of my thing from the beginning. It was actually all wrapped around the launch of the Aviator from Roka. It's called the Phantom Performance Aviator, right? And for anyone that has followed my career, they know that I'm the pro triathlete that races in Aviators.
Right.
And I have
signature style.
Yeah. And kind of started that, when I won that first Wildflower, I was wearing these gas station, Aviators, and that, I fell into that signature piece of equipment, I guess, just kind of out of dumb luck, if you want to call it that. And it kind of became my thing. And then I kind of felt like, at this time in my career, it had been 6 or 7 years, and I'd transitioned from, literally that kid that was buying the $10 Aviators at a gas station and getting hand-me-down kits and borrowing people's bikes, to having my own custom line of performance Aviators being launched by a company that is doing really well, and those glasses have been recognized by Outside Magazine, and it's like it was just kind of like a full circle moment for me, and I just felt like, honestly, it's corny, but just very appreciative that I had been able to have this experience as a professional athlete. It was always my dream to be a professional athlete. I wanted to be an NBA star, and then I wanted to run in the Olympics, and I never quite made it until I made it, in my early 30s in triathlon. And it just felt appropriate to me. I was like, hey, this is the time in my career arc where I need to start giving back, and maybe trying to help some new young talent in the sport have hopefully a similar experience to me. And so that was it.
What were some of your criteria besides the restriction on being a first-year professional?
Yep.
What kind of did you look for as you sifted through the applications? What stood out?
That's a great question. I didn't really know what I was looking for until I started sifting through the applications, which I think is semi-typical. But yeah, first year. The logistically it needed to be a first year pro, and then I wanted to limit it just to U.S. athletes as well, just because it was easier financially and legally and everything else to kind of do it appropriately. And then ultimately, what I ended up looking for, I think, was a combination of a few things. First and foremost, I really wanted to believe that the person had the talent to make it in the sport. And I actually believe that it's a little bit too easy to become a professional in our sport, and that to a certain extent leads to, I hate to say it, but like false hopes for a lot of athletes in the sport that they qualified for their pro card, so they think like a big sponsorship and making a living as a pro is right around the corner. And that's just not the case. It's really, really tough. And you have to be you have to combine a number of different things to be successful in the sport. And one of them is being a really talented athlete. So that was one of the things I wanted. I wanted to believe that they had the athleticism that made them capable of being competitive in professional triathlon. The second thing was a real commitment to doing it professionally. And I think you kind of have to be successful, you kind of have to jump off the deep end a little bit and commit to like, hey, I'm going to do this. This is going to be my number one priority. And I'm going to make a living in other ways to support myself as much as I can. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do whatever I can to maximize my training and my performance until I can cross that threshold where I'm supporting myself with my career. And all three of these athletes, I felt like were doing that as well. In addition, they also had kind of good support networks built up around them, either through their coaches or significant others, or flexible job work environments like Tony has with Specialized. And, and so I felt like they all had kind of like the commitment and then the support that would make it possible for them to make it. And then thirdly, sorry, I'm over answering your question, but it's, all the things considered. Thirdly was, a little bit of personality and charisma and ability to what I thought they would be able to connect with the triathlon community, if not immediately down the road. And because I think that's another massive part of being able to have a career in the sport is a bit of self-marketing, and that comes from personality and not being afraid to put yourself out there and talk to people and just be a good person. And all three of these athletes, I think, have all of those things in spades, and I really do think they're high potential athletes in different ways.
Well, that's great, and we're looking forward to meeting them here on the Lost in Transition podcast. And, of course, if people are not already following you online, and really they should be, but where can people go to get you on online and Facebook and Twitter and all that?
Yeah, my personal kind of sports website is Leap Day Sports. I was born on Leap Day, so that's the connection there. And then
wait a second, you can race in a really young age group then, can't you?
I know, right? Yeah, I'm just 8.5.
Exactly.
Or no, sorry, 9.5.
Junior, you're youth elite now.
yeah, exactly. So Leap Day Sports, and then you can find me on social channels on Jesse Thomas on Facebook, and then Jesse M. Thomas. McDonald is my middle name, so it's Jesse M. Thomas. And then you can check out our, my company that my wife and I started, Picky Bars, which is obviously part of the support for these guys, and part of what enables us to do it is pickybars.com. So you guys can check those out as well.
Wonderful. We'll link all those up in the show notes, and best of luck on your upcoming season as well. We'll be following along with that. And after the break, we'll talk to Alyssa, Allison, and Tony on the Lost in Transition podcast. Joined now on the Lost in Transition podcast by Allison Linnell, Alyssa Dela, and Tony Smorgowitz, recipients of the 2017 Jesse Thomas Scholarship, and all first-year pros in the sport of triathlon. We're going to get a sense of their backstory, experiences in the sport, and plans for the future. Allison, Alyssa, and Tony, welcome to Lost in Transition.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So here you all are in your first full year of being a pro triathlete. First off, how did you find yourself here? Allison, we'll start with you.
So I guess I started running, and I ran in college, and I had one good season, but then just kind of injured for a while and got a bit burned out with the sport. And right after college, I switched. I always wanted to do an Ironman, so I was like, okay, just start training for an Ironman. And so I did triathlons for 2 years after college, and I raced Kona, which was pretty cool. And then, I don't know, I was still not really loving running. And so I just started riding my bike a lot. And I really enjoyed cycling at the time. And I started racing and just doing local crits and road races and stuff. And really got into cycling. And for the past 2 years, I rode professionally. In 2015, I rode in Italy and did a bunch of the UCI races around Europe. And then last year, I rode for a domestic team. And did a lot of the the UCI races in the US, and it was an awesome experience. And then at the end of last year, our race season ended pretty early, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. You know, like, I don't really want to take an off season yet, so it's so early. And so I started running a bit, and I was like, oh, there's a local triathlon. Maybe I'll just, you know, hop in it for fun. And I just totally fell back in love with the sport. And I was like, man, I really want to do this again. And I was just so excited about it. So yeah, here I am, started training for triathlons again and loving it this time around.
All of you actually have a fairly deep running background. Alyssa, you are the only one that has gone professional in running before becoming a triathlete. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I was really lucky after college to I looked around at some of the Olympic development centers around the country and ended up at one called Zap Fitness in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. And so I lived there in the Appalachian Mountains for about 4.5 years after college, and ran there, did the Olympic trials in 2012, and I loved it. I had a great time, made a couple world teams, and really, I mean, I loved running forever, and then just sort of had a couple of rough years where I sort of felt like I was working really hard and not getting much back, and some personal things happened that just sort of stole my joy of running, and so I just kind of wanted to take a step back for a little while, but I wanted to stay active and had grown up swimming. And so I thought, well, I always said I was going to try a triathlon, so I might as well just stop saying that and actually try it. So the fall of 2015, I started training and did my first one in 2016. And just, I really liked it. It was super fun, I think, in a way that running had stopped being for me. And so I just was like, well, I'll just see what I can do. And now somehow I find myself here, which is pretty cool. I never really anticipated this, but it sort of opened a new chapter in athletics for me, which is pretty exciting.
You kind of undersold your first triathlon a little bit there from a little research. Naples, that was your first one, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you won it overall in 2:10.
Yeah.
And looking back at that race, actually, it looks like, if I'm doing the math on the splits right, you came nearly from 6 minutes behind coming off the bike onto the run. When did you realize that you were going to overtake the field and overtake, I know Brittany Pierce finished second right behind you?
I had been told before doing it that you shouldn't ever count yourself out because a lot can change. And I didn't really, I mean, I got off the bike and I knew I was really far behind because I think my husband told me. And it was also like an out and back run. So when I flipped around, I could see that I was, or when I was going out and shared and he flipped, I could see that I was really far behind. And I really did not think I was going to catch her at all. But I just remembered the guy who was coaching me at the time saying that, like, don't ever give up because it can change. And so I just kept trucking away thinking I was running really slow. And then all of a sudden, with about a mile to go, I could see her. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just try to get her. And I think with about like 600 to go, I passed her and just like did not anticipate that at all. Didn't anticipate winning anything. I mean, it was just fun. And so I guess that was my first sort of like glimpse into, and sort of what I liked about it was that so much can change and you have a lot of time to make adjustments and not to get, if something goes wrong, you can keep your head up and fix it. So I really liked it.
Tony, I know your background actually started mostly in triathlon as a youth and junior elite back in the late aughts and early 10s, and culminated actually in a podium finish in the World Championships 2011 in Beijing for the Junior Elite Worlds. How much were you able to keep up your non-running triathlon skills through college? I know you ran track and cross country for Michigan.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I chose Michigan was the coach was encouraging of me doing cross training as well. But once I got there, I found out that running a lot more and college was a lot harder than high school. So I couldn't do the swimming and biking on top of everything else. So it kind of went to the wayside after the summer after my freshman year. And I didn't really do much swimming or biking for the past 3 years.
It's certainly something, though, where the fitness is certainly not lost. Maybe some of the technique is a little rusty, but I'm sure it comes back quickly. Yeah.
So whenever I go home this summer, I do a little bit of swimming, maybe once or twice a week, and try to get in the pool during the school year at least once a month.
Just a little maintenance. And that's a good point for some people to remember. I know we have several people that, in fact, just a couple weeks ago on the show, we had talked to a junior elite that competes around the Southeast and around the world. And right now, a lot of people are faced with that choice of what, if you are good enough to be a junior elite triathlete, you're probably good enough to get a scholarship in one of the component sports, mostly running and swimming, not too many cycling opportunities, obviously. You know, but I know for her and for others making that decision, of course, NCAA is doing triathlon now, but only for women and only at about a dozen schools. But it'll be interesting to see if that continues to grow. But the moral of the story is your fitness stays pretty well if you're doing especially a Division I sport. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, and I think it's easy for it to come back really, really quick once you're done running in college or swimming or whatever you do.
Exactly. So as far as, you know, being in the first year of being a professional triathlete, what's one of the most surprising or unexpected things that's kind of happened so far after turning pro? And we'll start again with Allison.
The first thing that came to mind for me was walking into pro meetings before the race. For me, it's like the most terrifying experience. And I guess I was not expecting, I guess I hadn't really been to many athlete meetings ever. And then like you walk into a room with all these amazing triathletes and like world champions and stuff that you only saw on TV. And then now you're like sitting next to them and you're about to race them the next day. And yeah, I mean, for me, I just never really thought about that, but it's kind of cool, like being on the starting line with all these people that you've always looked up to and admired.
I'm guessing that the pre-race routine was a little bit different in the pro cycling ranks. Did they not have that same?
No, not really. And yeah, I mean, you have like a whole team in cycling, you know,
right,
so
that's true.
You kind of have like your team meeting and you have a strategy for the race and everyone has their job. And I was always just like more of like a domestique. So, you know, my job would just be working
right
for other people. And yeah, you basically just like pin your number while sitting around and eating some snacks before the race.
Much easier in pro cycling, at least at that
yeah.
in that way, to just show up and keep your head down, do your job, and versus triathlon,
yeah.
You show up and everyone's kind of looking at you. You have your bib says pro.
Yeah, everyone's kind of like eyeing you up, and yeah, it's a little bit different, a little bit more nerve-wracking than
right.
expected. But
so part of being a solo sport, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Alyssa, obviously bringing some of that professional runner experience to the table in doing that, obviously in college for a team. I don't know what in professional running, were you a part of a team, or was it more independent competition, or how did that work?
Yeah, it was mostly independent. After college, there's club cross country, which being part of Zap Fitness, we never had enough girls to do it, but the guys would usually have a team. So I was always very jealous of them that they got to do cross country as a team, because you don't get to do that after college much, and it's pretty fun. So no, I mostly just, you know, you worked out by yourself and you raced by yourself, and which has its pros and cons, I guess.
Certainly. So what are some of the things transitioning from being a professional in one sport to a professional in another? What are some of the similarities or differences between those two experiences?
Well, there's a lot more stuff to keep track of in this one.
That's for sure.
Oh my goodness, and I am a dingbat, so this has been one heck of a transition, that's for sure. My husband can testify to that. He makes lists and lists, and I think I know what I'm doing, and I generally forget something. So that's been crazy, because all I had to do before was pack a singlet and my flats and a watch, you know. So that's been really different. But I mean, I think just from the aspect of working hard, setting a race plan and executing, that's very similar. It's nice to have, like, in your mind in running, you can segment a race, you know, however you want to, by miles or, you know, half marathon or whatever. But this is a lot more like obviously segmented, and, you know, execute something in the swim and then reset and start again for the bike, and reset and start again for the run, which I think is really cool and I like a lot. So that hasn't been too hard of a transition, but just it's been tough getting to learn the bike. I had never really cycled before, so that was probably kind of the harder thing. And then getting back in the pool again after, I don't even know, 15 years was really short.
Certainly a little bit of rust after that long, I'm sure.
A lot of rust.
Yeah.
It was more like weightlifting for a long time before I actually was like, oh, I can move my arms fast enough to get my heart rate going.
Right. Tony, having come up through the junior and youth elite programs, obviously competed in triathlon at a very high level before, but being professional and kind of out there on your own maybe makes it a little bit different. But then, of course, you're also on the USA development team, taking a slightly different track, if I understand correctly, from Melissa and Allison, as far as going for Tokyo 2020 as part of Team USA and kind of focusing on that ITU distance. But what are some of the things that you've picked up over the past 12 months?
But I guess for me, actually, triathlon, I just got my pro card in March, so it's been just the very beginning of my first year. The thing that stands out the most to me is the one thing I really enjoyed being at Michigan was the team atmosphere, the camaraderie of having all the teammates that you train with and live with every day. And I really thought that I wouldn't have that when I went to triathlon after I graduated. But I really feel like there's a great team atmosphere here. And it's an awesome thing to be a part of. So it's something that was a pleasant surprise.
Do you get a chance to train with the development team very often, or do you mostly do independent stuff and they kind of coordinate out of that central location, or how does that work?
Yes. So I guess like being on the development team is kind of just like a title. It's not, It's not really a team at all. They just help you give you some funding and maybe coordinate some travel. But all my training is done in South Bend, Indiana with Team IE, and some other legal triathletes as well are here, unless it's here for the next couple of weeks.
You all are in the development stage of the career, especially as professionals. What's one thing in triathlon that you'd like to get better at, and one thing that you already feel pretty confident about? Allison, I assume you're pretty confident on the bike.
I mean, I'd like to think so, but it's definitely, cycling in triathlon is much different from cycling. That's true. In cycling races. But yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my strength out of the three. I guess there's always room for improvement though. And my weakness would definitely be the swim. I pretty much get my butt kicked every day in the pool, but it's great. And I have a pretty awesome training group here in Boulder. So it's improving slowly but surely.
Always good to have a goal to work on. Alyssa, what would be your biggest thing that you want to work on and biggest thing that you have confidence in already?
I think I thought like running would be something that it would be fine, and I would be very confident in that. Switching to this too, which was probably my naivety of the sport, because now, while it is like my strongest thing, just getting used to running off of the bike and how different that feels, and kind of having an understanding of what I can do early, like how fast can I run and still like run fast at the end. And it's just such a balance that I didn't quite anticipate struggling with so much. So I would kind of say my strength and my weakness are kind of the same thing. Like I am confident in my run, but I also need to figure it out. It feels so much different. And so I kind of have to get a little more used to that and find kind of a balance with that.
Pacing is always an interesting thing in triathlon, and certainly different than doing any one of the sports individually. And Tony, what would you say for you, one of the more things that you'd like to work on and things that you already feel confident about?
I started out as a swimmer. That was my first sport. Started competitive swimming when I was 8 years old, but swimming is still my weakest of the three. So I'm spending the majority of my time in the pool and in the lake working on my stroke and just working on fitness.
Certainly something, especially on the shorter course, that takes on a bigger importance than 1.2 or 2.4 in the halves and fulls. And especially in draft legal as well, so important to come out of the water close enough to get in the front bike pack. So I'm sure that's definitely taking on a high importance for you. And I assume you feel like you have the running fairly well nailed down. You did a lot of middle distance stuff, if I recall correctly, in track and cross country.
Yeah, in college I was mostly kind of like 3K and 5K.
Right.
And since I have that running background, I haven't been focusing on the running as much, kind of just maintain some fitness. So I'm kind of been surprised, but I feel like I'm in really good bike shape. So it's good to just have the swim to work on right now and have that as my main focus.
Makes sense. Of course, getting the chance to race this year as a pro, but also as age groupers or youth elite or whatever before, over time, have there been any pre-race rituals or routines that you have for calming or focus, or anything that you do in particular that's kind of unique to your own situation? Allison, we'll start with you again.
I don't know if I have any more. Like in college, I used to be very, like college running and even high school running, I would like wear the same socks or something or the same sports bra. And I thought it was like lucky, and if I didn't have it or I lost a sock, I'd freak out. But I think cycling really changed that for me, and I learned how to be a lot more relaxed before races. And there's just so much time in the race, like if something went wrong, to fix it, or if you felt bad, you know, there was still time to feel better, or, you know, have more nutrition, so you did feel better in a little bit. And I think that kind of carried over to triathlons for me. Like sometimes I still get really nervous, but I kind of look at it, it's such a long event, especially for half Ironmans compared to like a running race on the track, that there's enough time in the race to like fix problems that arise. And so I think it helps me to be a little bit less nervous. I don't really have any like lucky socks or anything anymore. Right. I just, yeah.
It sounds like you've got a very calm mental approach in general, and have a good perspective on where you are when you're walking up to the start line, essentially, in a longer race like that. Yeah, I'd say that. Alyssa, I know, obviously you mentioned always trying to remember things, and I know that's when I'm standing on the start line, that's always what I'm thinking of is, what did I forget? What do I have? Or the what ifs, you know, what if the goggles break? What if somebody kicks me in the face? And it's not even always things that I'm afraid of as much as just little annoying things that kind of nag at your mind. What are some of the things that go through your head, and do you have any routine that kind of helps you focus when it comes time to toe the start line?
Yeah, it's actually something that I've worked really hard at over the years. When I started out swimming as a little kid, I would stand at the end of the block, or at the end of the lane at the block, and cry basically until the gun went off, and then I'd just like take a deep breath and jump in and swim. And that sort of anxiety towards racing really carried over all the way, like high school. I'd be standing on the line crying. Sometimes in college, like it wasn't until 2 years of running professionally that I sort of started to figure it out, where I was like, what am I afraid of, right? Like that's what I would stand on the line thinking of, is all of these things, like what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And the fact that I'm never scared in workouts, and I love that. So just standing there thinking of the things that make me joyful in running, or now like in triathlon, and just remembering, it helps a lot. My husband gets to come to a lot of the races, and just looking at him and thinking like, he'll love me tomorrow. My family will love me tomorrow. Everybody who loves me will still love me no matter what happens. And I kind of said when I started doing this that if it stopped being joyful, then I wouldn't do it anymore. And so that's kind of my thing, is I like to find joy before the race starts, and then as it's going. And that really has a calming effect on me, because otherwise I could very easily devolve into a crying mess on the starting line. It's not helpful.
No,
at all.
Not at all. Not at all. That makes me think of, they needed that book that Leslie Patterson and her husband wrote, The Brave Athlete, Calm the F Down. I don't know if you've seen that circulating. Just we had a chance to talk to them a couple weeks back, but yeah, they're a lot of fun. Tony, of course, having raced as a youth and junior elite, how has your approach to pre-race changed at all over the years? What you do and think before you start off a triathlon?
From cross country and track, I really had a routine where the start time was set for the race, and you knew when you were going to warm up, and you knew when you were going to have your last meal or start drills and stretches. But it seems like the schedule for triathlon is usually pretty hectic. Mm-hmm. Based on where the race is, what the temperature is, when swim warm-up is, when bike transition check-in is. So it's hard to have a routine, but I've really getting used to just going with the flow and going whatever works in the moment. But one thing that I do like to do all the time is take 5 to 10 minutes before the race and kind of lay down in a quiet, relaxing place and just think about every little step of the race and how it's going to go. And I picture in my mind that I picture every step going well, and then if I think of one step and like I messed up in my mind, then I go back and do it again until it's right.
Some relaxation combined with visualization, it sounds like.
Yep.
So race schedule for the upcoming or the remainder of 2017. Looked a little bit at some of the upcoming races for you all, but what upcoming race on the calendar that you know you're going to do right now are you most excited about, Allison?
Well, unfortunately, I'm struggling with a little bit of a
the kneecap
right
fracture.
Now.
That's right. I did read about that.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to have that heal up, and then I'll reassess once, depending on how the recovery goes and what kind of training I can do. But yeah, so I haven't really thought too much about it just because it gets me like a little bit stressed out.
Understandably.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, ideally Worlds in September. So we'll see. Hopefully the recovery process will go well.
Indeed. Well, we'll be rooting for you on that. Alyssa, I know you have coming up Ironman Steelhead 70.3 up in Benton Harbor. I guess, is that a Lake Michigan swim up there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I grew up on the lake shore or close to the lake shore in Michigan, so definitely have had some swimming out there, even in red flag conditions, which looking back at my open water swim skills at the time being almost nil is incredibly stupid. I'm lucky to have made it to adulthood. But you have been on the podium for your last two 70.3s at Eagleman and Racine. How do you feel about Steelhead?
I'm really excited. Racine being kind of back in the Midwest, my brother and sister-in-law live in Madison. Another sister-in-law lives in Chicago. My parents are in Fort Wayne. So a bunch of people came and cheered me on there, and some more people are coming to Benton Harbor. So I'm just really excited to have the people that I love watch me race, and just game plan same as always, just execute the race plan and see how it shakes out. But I'm super excited to get to race in the Midwest, and I get to train here in South Bend for a little while and ride the race course, and so that'll be great too.
I know you're originally from the Fort Wayne area. What brought you down here to the Southeast?
Well, my husband's job, he works for an IT company that's in Greenville, South Carolina, and he was in sales, but now he's a project manager, and so we live there just kind of because of him. So, yeah.
Makes sense. It's actually how I ended up down Knoxville, other side of the mountains, basically. Here.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember Rev 3 Knoxville last year. You won the age group race, and we quizzed Tim Don, Ironman world record holder, was on the show last week about his recollections because he won the long course back when we had that here. Do you remember anything about the race course that you liked, or have you done Rev 3 Knoxville before?
No, I hadn't. I mean, last year was my first year racing in general. So, no, it was great. It was close to, at the time we were living in Asheville, so we just drove over, and I think it was only like my third race or something. So I loved it. I thought it was awesome. The ride was hilly, but just kept you focused the whole time. And no, it was great. I thought that was awesome. I'd do it again. It's fun.
You didn't end up getting turned around by those markings on the course that had people going 3 miles out of the way, did you?
No, I didn't. And I actually was, I guess listen to your coach, right? He had us drive the course the day before. So I kind of had an idea and then knew which markings to follow. So I was really glad that I didn't, because that would stink.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are the odds that another organized cycling race, the same weekends, using the exact same several colors and arrows?
Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah. But I know there was a lot of ruffled feathers about that. But, of course, the rule is to know the course, and you did. So that's great. I know also this year you've got 4 Major League Triathlon Series events on the schedule. For those unfamiliar, in fact, I guess I had seen the name before but hadn't looked it up. Explain what that series is and what that's like.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So at the start of the year, I kind of planned on kind of going the IT route as well, like Tony. But just, I don't know, I kind of was drawn towards the longer stuff. And so at the beginning of the year, when I thought I was doing that, I signed up to do MLT, which is really fun. It's a super sprint relay. So it's there's 8 teams, and it's 2 guys and 2 girls on each team. And it's so fast and super fun to get to do it as a team, because you don't get to do that very often. And yeah, it's been really cool. And I'm excited to do 2 more, and in Vail and then in Cleveland.
And Tony, looking obviously toward getting a ITU experience, obviously selection hopefully for 2020. How does that influence, I guess, the races that you're doing now, and what does that pathway look like for you?
Yeah, so to get onto into start list, you have to have a certain number of points, and it's all based on the ITU point list. So you can get points at Continental Cups, World Cups, and World Triathlon Series races. But since it's my first year, I didn't have any points. So it's starting out at Continental Cups where I can make the start list for sure, getting points there. And then once I have enough points, doing World Cups and then World Triathlon Series races. I did 4 World Cups or 4 Continental Cups so far this year. And I got enough points. So I'm actually doing my first WTS race next weekend in Edmonton. So I'm super excited and a little nervous for that.
Edmonton, I recall that being quite a race last year. I forget exactly who won it, but I recall it being in the headlines for some reason. I'll have to go look that up. But hopefully you're in the headlines for it this year. That would be a lot of fun.
See.
We'll see, exactly.
It's going to be a fast swim and a hard bike. They changed the course from last year, but this year it's 6 laps for a sprint distance triathlon, and there's a pretty big hill on each lap.
I know that probably in some ways maybe makes it a little bit easier for you in that your track is a little bit more defined than if you were to go 70.3 or fulls, where you can kind of pick and choose. I mean, you can still pick and choose your races, but it's kind of, there's more of a, I guess, graduated skill, I guess, that you're working through, as opposed to just going and signing up as a pro for Ironman, whatever.
Yeah. So for ITU, it's all about getting as many points as possible, and then within each year, trying to be ranked the highest in the World Triathlon Series rankings. So each year you can score 4 WTS races, 2 Continental Cups, and then the grand final. So that pretty much lays out your race schedule every single year to begin with.
Right. So not a lot of throwing a dart at a map and doing destination races, as it were.
Nope, not at all.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have all 3 of you on the podcast tonight, and we'll wrap it up with letting people know how they can follow you in your progress. Allison, it looks like you've got a website and Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
I believe it's AllisonLinnell.weebly.com. Instagram is Allison Linnell. It looks like that is the same on Twitter as well, and Facebook. We'll get that linked up on the show notes. And
Awesome.
Alyssa, I know that you've got a website out there too, Facebook, Instagram. Your Twitter, I believe, is that your maiden name on there, Alyssa McCaig?
Yes, it is. I'm not great at Twitter.
You don't have to be. That's okay. We'll leave that to Jesse. He's nuts. But the website is, by the way, I must say the website, very nice looking. I do that as kind of one of my day jobs, but very impressive. Nice look to it for sure.
Thank you.
We'll be sure to link up those for people to follow you. And Tony, I know that you have a GoFundMe page out there too for help in funding this, as you're calling it, Trail to Tokyo 2020. So we'll put the link for that up there. Anywhere else that people can follow you online? I know you're on.
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I have a website as well.
Oh, good. What's the website?
TonySmorgowitz.com, or another link is Team Tony USA. That one's easier to remember, easier to spell.
Gotcha. Somehow Google must have led me astray, or maybe I misspelled the last name. That's probably more like
probably, yeah.
Well,
it's an easy one to misspell. It took me about 4 years.
Exactly. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll find that. We'll get that link posted up as well for all 3 of you. And best of luck on your upcoming season. Glad that Jesse could help you out a little bit in your first year as pros, and definitely keep in touch. Best of luck, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Our thanks again to Jesse Thomas, Allison Linnell, Alyssa Dela, and Tony Smorgowitz for joining us on this week's Lost in Transition podcast. And go on and check out our friends over at Crushing Iron. This week's latest podcast, taking an hour off of a 70.3 time in 1 year. Can it be done? Well, Jamie Lopez, age grouper, raced Ironman 70.3 Muncie last year, and he cut a full hour off his time. Coach Robbie and Mike Tiroli explore just how he managed to do that. You can find them over at crushingiron.com. We'll talk to you again next week. Author and coach Matt Fitzgerald is talking about how to race lean for optimum race time and some emerging research into ideal race weight. weight. We'll talk to you again soon. Follow us online at losttransition.com, Facebook and Twitter, of course, for the social media updates. Share and subscribe, and rank and review as well. It helps us boost in the ratings and reach more triathletes out there. Until next time, I'm Chris Gerard. May all your transitions be smooth.